Are we concerned at all about a letdown from the Lions?
I would be honest, I might be sick of Eminem more than I'm sick of Taylor Swift.
What's wrong with Eminem?
It's just like they really.
Greetings and welcome to The Spread, Nesson's Football Picks Podcast. I'm Nesson.com's Mike Cole, joined once again and as always by Nesson.com extraordinaire Ricky Doyle. Ricky, how are you?
I'm good. You sound like you had a little frog in your throat before we got on here.
I apologize in advance. We don't have any cough buttons, anything like that, so I might have to hack up along at some point.
It's that time of the year. It's that time of the year, Mike.
It's not even that. It's like just kind of that dry back of the throat one. So
sucks.
Yeah,
you just can't shake it.
Whatever. I don't.
It's just a nuisance.
Yeah, it really hasn't been that bad at all. But it's annoying. So I want to get that out of the way. I don't want to be coughing all over your points, and I don't want to cost us a viral TikTok or something wherever we put these videos after they're done. So,
yep.
I apologize in advance. So, divisional round. Some people say it's the best week of the NFL season. I typically tend to agree. Drop something. What do you want to get into?
I was way more excited about the wild card round than this divisional round.
I think I agree.
Like, looking at this, I'm like, I don't know. I mean, by the end of the week, I'll probably talk myself into all these games. But at first glance, outside of that, the finale on Sunday night, every other game's kind of whatever.
Sunday, a lot more enticing than Saturday, in my opinion. Although, I mean, it's pretty clear. Like, I guess I just said a very basic, simple, like obvious statement without realizing it, because you just look at the spreads and there's a chance for some, topsy-turvy chicanery on Saturday. But yeah, that is life with high spreads. It's either going to be a blowout or you're going to get something weird. So there's, we'll get into that as we make our picks and kind of see how we shake out there. But if you do think about it, I look at this through a lot of times through the prism of like the Patriots. You're going to get
as we all do.
Yeah, you're going to get a couple stinkers this weekend. Like how soon we forget that Saturday night used to be reserved for the Patriots absolutely curb stomping the Houston Texans or I don't know, insert other AFC South team.
Indianapolis Colts.
Yeah. Yeah. So, do you have any major takeaways from the wild card weekend, or do you just want to kind of as we go?
I think by and large, I thought we were pretty on most games. Yeah. How they would play out. I thought last week was a very good exercise in discipline, because I think there were a couple games or a couple aspects of each game where I didn't want to completely jump into that pool, like the Monday night game, the Bucs Eagles game. Like, try to handicap that was an absolute nightmare. Like, I felt good about the under, did not like a side, stayed away from that. Even Cowboys Packers, I think we both sat there, expected a lot of points in that game, but also were a little dicey on the side. And so, true to my word, my resolution, I stayed away from the side there, focused on the total. So it was, just leaning into the things that you feel good about. And I think overall it was a pretty strong weekend for us. Go us.
Yeah, you went 4-2 with your picks on Nesson.com. I went 3-3, so that's respectable. I honestly, in terms of the sides, I didn't really check the records until just now. Expected to do worse. It didn't feel like I did as well. But in terms of storylines, narratives, kind of handicapping the game from a big picture standpoint, to your point, we did a pretty good job.
Yeah, that they all kind of played out in the manner in which we expected.
It's just like us patting ourselves on the back.
Well, we got to take the victory laps when we can.
That's a fair point.
We spend the rest of the year dumping on ourselves. Trying to be more positive in the new year, Mike. I'm sure you've noticed that over the past couple of weeks and everything else I've done in the office.
It's intoxicating. It's what's the word I'm looking for? It's contagious.
Yeah.
That's this cough is not the only thing going around. It's that super positivity.
It's that optimism.
Do you want to talk about my basement now, or do you want to get into it a little bit later?
So I was trying to lift the spirits before we got into it, but if you want to dive into that,
you said. I heard the word pool. You said something else, a nightmare, and I was like,
well, that was not intentional. Yeah, I'm not trying to. I'm trying to raise you up and not drag you down. But let's get into that little situation before we get into the picks, because I'm sure everybody's dying to hear about it. But
Thursday night, I was exhausted. I think I was at the start of this cold or whatever. I'm like, it's hard. Nobody wants to hear this. When you have a kid, it's exhausting. Everybody's tired or whatever. We understand. But it was one of those days. I'm just tired. I'm ready to go to bed early. For me, not somebody like you who you're a night owl. I'm an early bird. I I wanted to go to bed about 9:15, 9:30. Had my tea, sat down. It got done brewing my tea in an electric tea kettle. And I was like, you know what? I look at my wife. I go, does that smell like something's burning right now? And she said, yeah, actually it does. So I assumed that I just had something plastic next to the tea kettle.
Yep.
So I went in there, didn't smell anything. I just sat back down. I was like, man, it smells pretty bad. I said, I think it's coming from the basement. So I went downstairs into the basement, and I took a hard left, looked down into, we have a finished basement. It drops down a little bit. There's like a little level. And we had about 2.5, 3 inches of water.
But, good amount.
The entire thing flooded. Amount. So I was up until 12:30 trying like hell to use my pool pump. That wasn't totally working. I have a pump for the pool cover that, when it gets at the end of the winter, you drain it.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to use that thing. It's not working. I got weird hoses hooked up going in and out of my my basement. I'm here, there, and everywhere. So
just going one bucket at a time. And just...
Yeah, I tried that for a little bit. I use mops. Mops are useless. The mop industry is a racket. I don't know.
Let's just swish the water around a bunch. And it really doesn't do anything.
It's like how to mop. It's not.
Yeah.
You're supposed to go backwards in a figure eight. I was like, this is just not working.
God forbid, and then you pick it up and you drag it over like some dry floor, and then you're dripping all over what had previously been an unaffected area. So
I go out to the deck or the
Screw
shed.
mops.
I grab I got a squeegee thing for the side of the pool on the inside. I'm taking that.
So you're exhausting all options, really.
So the fire thing was legit too. I almost set the house, almost burned the house down. Yeah. So we have surge protectors in the basement, and they had become overflowed with water. So it was burning electrical. And I was
that's not.
I think I have to call an electrician to make sure that the outlets are still okay. I'm not touching those outlets. So it's just smells like burning down there. I'm down there the whole night. I had to you have to cut off the electricity, right? So I'm afraid. So riddle me this. I don't even know. I'm like, can I step in that water?
Next thing you know, you could be, like Marv in Home Alone.
I don't think you can step in that water, right? It's like
I would not advise you to do.
No, it's like the Ozarks or whatever when that guy gets fried, like he's in the water. Like I don't know if I can touch, so I'm not going to step on it. So I had to shut the power off. So I'm down there with a flashlight, holding like a flashlight.
It's a good thing you smelled it too, because it's clearly you had no alarms were going off.
Luckily, our boss allowed me to take PTO on Friday. So I went first thing in the morning, ran over to the department store. Long story short, I am now the proud owner of a new wet dry vac.
Oh, hell yeah.
Which is awesome, by the way. So I was using that, and it finally starts working. But the only way you can do it is I got a 12-gallon one. So you suck it all up, and it gets full, and it stops working. So then you have to unplug it, and the plug stays connected to it. So I got to wrap the plug around it, disconnect the hose, carry it up the stairs, outside, drain it, bring it back in. And so the reason this all happened is because we have a sump pump, which is, you're like, this would be well, you should get a sump pump. We already have one.
Yeah.
The thing malfunctioned because there was so much water, and that's in another room where everything is. So it's this little closet where the sump pump is dug into the floor. Do you know what a sump pump?
Yeah.
So it's dug into the floor, and I go in there and I'm like, oh God, this thing's flooded. And that's where all the circuit breakers are. So I was like, that was a fun little thing where I'm like, all right, let me just go turn off the electricity. This will be fine. We'll figure this out. It's like, oh, that's why. So in the process, let's revisit another issue I've had in the past is mice.
Well, that was my first question. Was does this override the mouse problem?
We're getting there.
This certainly wasn't how you intended to solve that issue, but I thought maybe the eternal optimist that I am, maybe you got rid of the mice.
I tell you what, if there was a mouse still in that finished area where they flooded, they escaped, or there just wasn't there because there were
maybe
no
they're just floating around with noodles right now.
I was expecting that. So anyway, I go into the utility closet to I'm like, oh God, look down. There's upside down mouse trap with a mouse just dangling. Just floating.
The dead man float.
So I'm like, I went outside.
That's what I pictured. It just like bobbing for apples. There's mice all over your basement floor.
Went back outside, grabbed the pool skimmer, came in, skimmed them out, carried them out, threw them away. It's been a mess. So I'm really hoping that these Buffalo Bills Super Bowl tickets get home.
That was the other thing.
That changes the equation.
I hope you didn't keep those in the bottom drawer of your downstairs desk.
I was going to ask you when we get to that Bills game if I should hedge them. But the more I think about it, I kind of have to let it ride.
Now, yeah.
I don't think I have any major damage. The floorboards in the basement do kind of feel a little uneven, but all things considered, it could have been a lot worse. I guess
the fact that you avoided the fire, I think, is a win in and of itself.
I mean, it's like,
if you had my smoke detector or fire alarm, whatever, the thing goes off like nonstop. I mean, you light up like a cigarette within 100 yards. That thing is chirping away. So I could give you some tips on which one to install.
In the bedroom down there, we have a closet that has like the water heater, the furnace, et cetera, that's attached to the bedroom. And in that room, there's a smoke detector, and we've been neglecting the battery for 6 weeks.
Yeah. And
so it's like a dying battery. So not only am I downstairs, like shoveling out water and stuff, every 30 seconds, beep. It's just like, I was ready to just walk. I could have just drowned myself.
Taking a Louisville Slugger.
I should have stepped down into him. So it was a tough weekend.
Well, let's pick you some winners this week.
Yeah, let's get into the games.
Sounds like you need it.
We'll start Saturday, January 20th, Saturday afternoon in Baltimore. The Ravens host the Houston Texans as 9-point favorites, total 45. This is a rematch of Week 1, a game in which Baltimore won 25-9. I don't put a ton of stock in that because that was C.J. Stroud's first start. You raised an interesting point about C.J. Stroud. I will let you use that as a jumping-off point to handicap this game and tell me where you stand.
Yeah, so we did our little experiment last week trying to figure out where Jordan Love ranks in the, if you're stopped when you get to Jordan Love in your quarterback rankings. And in the process, we named a lot of quarterbacks.
We sprayed all over the board.
We were all over the map, just kind of talking it through. One guy who I don't know if we mentioned at all, but certainly probably should have, is C.J. Stroud.
I feel like we did.
If we did, it was in passing. It was definitely in passing.
It did not make the YouTube short, I don't think.
So I ask you this. Where does he rank? We know how high we both are in Jordan Love. Look like geniuses coming out of last week, by the way. Stroud, where's he?
Stroud and Love had pretty much the exact same stat line. Almost scary. I think it was like 16 for 21, 3 touchdowns, and I think a 5-yard difference.
Those two teams are in very similar spots in their rebuild, right?
I do want to kind of...
Or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I kind of want to point out, I'm not totally hating this idea that at FanDuel I can parlay the Packers and the Texans to play in the Super Bowl at 146-1. So maybe that's how. I tell you what, if I bet that and I hit it,
yeah,
I'm gonna have the sickest basement.
Oh, you're gonna just ping pong tables.
I'll build a pool into the basement. So yeah, they're similar, and
it's the mice's worst nightmare. Like, oh god, it's finally gonna get us out of here with that Super Bowl pick.
Long term, the interesting thing is like, what do the Texans do after Bobby Slowick and inevitably gets picked off of that coaching staff? And that's the issue with hiring a defensive coach like they did, right? Is that you have to bring in an offensive coordinator, and if you have success, the coordinator is going to get plucked away for a head coaching job. So, and like Love has a little more experience, so I guess that's not a perfect comparison, but I think they're pretty similar. I think I would put them in Stroud is in that same
second
1.5 tier, like
right? Yeah,
tier 1.5.
Yeah, I think it really
below the main guys, but above whoever we ultimately, the uninspiring second tier.
Yeah, it's the only thing holding them back from being firmly in tier 1, right, is the sample size. Like,
yes, it's just the same thing with Jordan Love.
It's one thing to come out and have this success early on, but like we've seen it before, where there's that second year, defenses start to adjust. There's all the tape out there. How do they, how do they adapt? So like,
I will say though, the thing that they've done
so far, everything else is he's been passing with flying colors.
They've had a nasty rash of injuries too, like to their skill position players. Yep. They don't have a running game at all. So like you could argue he's done more than, to go back to the Love comp, he's done more than Jordan Love with less. Or
is this
it's a sample size thing is the only thing holding me back here.
Is it hyperbolic to say that this is the best season for a rookie quarterback in NFL history?
Not a good enough. I imagine, was Andrew Luck up? Did he have a great year?
I think there's probably a group there that you can look back. I'm thinking even like RG3 and like Roethlisberger, Dak Prescott. Like,
sure.
There's plenty of examples of a rookie having a good season, but I think like
the only thing that really keeps me from buying into that notion is just the injury thing where he didn't play the full season. So it's not really by fault of his own, but like what?
Yeah, like that was like what, two games he missed?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So, like, maybe that actually helps his case. It's certainly up there.
I don't know if you saw the graphic during the game on Saturday, but the only quarterbacks lead the NFL in pass yards per game and touchdown to interception ratio. In the last, what was the stat? I gotta pull it up here. Yeah, only quarterback to lead the NFL in pass yards per game and touchdown to interception ratio, which you feel like you would do quite frequently, but it was Joe Montana in 1989. Tom Brady in 2007.
No, it makes sense
CJ Stroud this
wouldn't
season.
So what was it? Yards per game and
plus touchdown interception.
No, that makes sense because like you go back to like the Stafford Lions days. He always threw for like 5,500 yards or whatever it was.
Yeah, but a lot of picks.
And you're like, because you're playing from behind, and usually the better teams are the ones that have to throw more. And
yeah, the touchdown interception ratio is more. I think you think more like game manager. Type situation, or just where you don't have a ton of touchdown passes, but you just not
or big time elite. Like so maybe he's getting up there.
Interesting, but
so they're 9-point underdogs this weekend.
Yeah. So for me, I'm gonna take the points. I'm gonna take the Texans, and obviously Stroud, for all the reasons we mentioned, is a huge factor in that. What about the defense? Houston's defense.
What about it?
Better than we give it credit for?
Probably. Good run defense, right? I think.
Number 1 in rush success rate. Number 9 in overall success rate since week 8, which is after the week after their bye. Number 3 in success rate behind the Jets in Cleveland. Cleveland obviously fell apart there last week. But, I think that defense has sort of found a little bit of an identity, which I think stems from having that defensive-oriented coach. It's just gotten better as the season has gone on. In its ability to stop the run, we said that would be a big factor against Cleveland, forcing Joe Flacco to throw. I think it's going to be huge this week as well. I mean, Baltimore leads the NFL in rush play percentage, 3rd in rushing yards percentage. So obviously their offense is predicated on their ability to move the ball on the ground. Houston takes that away. Like, what does the Baltimore offense look like when it's strictly Lamar throwing the ball? Like we've had Baltimore's. It wouldn't be the first time they get tripped up in the playoffs. Obviously, I look at them as 1-3 against the spread as favorites of 7 or more this year. The lone cover being that Houston Week 1 game, which, as you mentioned, kind of a throwaway game at this point. I just think that I don't know if Houston is able to win this game, but I certainly think that they can hang around, and I might lean under as well, for the reason being that Baltimore's probably going to try to run the ball and just isn't going to have that success that they've had throughout this season.
Yeah, so I am not totally sold on a side yet. If I had to choose one, I think I would break one of my own rules and lean toward laying the points with Baltimore. Despite the fact that, like, with a lower total, I like to kind of grab the points more often than not. But with this one thing we haven't mentioned yet is weather. Weather seems like it could be an issue Saturday afternoon in Baltimore. Right now, they're calling for partly cloudy skies, mid-20s with winds 10 to 20, 25 miles per hour. Like, if we're on the higher end of those wind gusts, I think that really changes the complexion of this game, because you kind of mentioned it already. Baltimore runs the ball more than anyone else, so at least they're comfortable with it. With the fact that Houston's been good against the run is reason for concern. Houston is far less comfortable running the ball, it seems. They have the second highest pass rate among the playoff teams, which is a telling stat. Like, you look at everybody else at the top of that list, it's mostly bad teams because they have to pass because they're behind. This team likes to throw the ball. CJ Stroud, I guess if there was a knock on him, if you want to call it that, or at least an average trait that he has, it's arm strength. I went back and read maybe 3 or 4 draft profiles of strangers on the internet about him and said he's got a good, not great arm. I went back and did a little more.
I think that undersells him. I don't know. Yeah, when I watch him, I'm like, this guy can pump it downfield.
Then I did a Google search of CJ Stroud arm strength wind, and then wind weather. And I found this. I thought this was interesting. The worst game of his college career was a 2022 against Northwestern. They were 38-point favorites in Evanston. They won 21-7. He scored 7 points in the first half. He was 10 of 26 for a career low 76 yards. The only game of his entire college career he didn't throw a touchdown pass. by far the worst passer rating of his career. Now, according to one story I read on the internet, wind gusts were up to about 45, 50 miles per hour in that game, so a little windier. And it's one game, so it's hard to make a huge takeaway here. But it's something to kind of...
You got to pick it something, right?
And so, all right, so like from that thing, if both teams have to run the ball a little bit more, the clock's going to be moving. And if Houston's good at stopping the run to begin with, maybe Baltimore doesn't score as much. And all of a sudden, we got a lower scoring game here. The clock keeps moving. So
you like the under, too?
I like the under 45.
Yep.
If I had to make a pick on this game. And like I said, I'm probably leaning towards Baltimore laying the points, but I don't love that as much. Like, I could see this being this is like many thing where I just make a pick. 20-10 type of deal.
Okay.
Maybe even higher.
Just
Baltimore's defense is legit. I guess, 25-9. You want to run that back from week 1, I guess you could talk that.
There you go.
Getting there, so.
You mentioned your whether to take a slice out of that Packers-Texans Super Bowl matchup. Texans first team since the 1981 Giants with 200-1 or higher preseason Super Bowl odds to advance to the divisional round.
Jeez Louise.
So I think that's where, when we talk about Stroud's season in the context of NFL history, why it is so impressive to me is because of how low the expectations were for that team in general.
Yeah, a rookie coach, rookie quarterback.
Yeah, it's pretty wild how quickly they were able to rebuild that, which obviously goes back to the draft, not just with the Stroud pick, but, being aggressive as they were to bring in a Will Anderson on the defensive side. And
yeah, that's true. They are
they expedited their rebuild in a big way.
Like we might get to the Patriots a little bit later. It's a telling state of affairs for them that they kind of have to copy the Texans now, which makes sense because maybe you let the wrong guy go. Nick Cassier's like, I'm not leaving here. Yeah. So interesting. So all right, let's go to Saturday night. Back to the Thunderdome for the Packers. In just a house of horrors. They have to go to San Francisco to take on the 49ers in Santa Clara. This game's set for an 8:15 kick. The 49ers up to 10-point favorites in this one with the total at 50. It's going to rain probably. I think it was a 95% chance of rain, low 50s, slight breeze, but could be a little ugly, kind of a throwback to the mid-90s when the Packers and 49ers played playoff games in the rain. So this is a big spread. My stuff's coming off here.
Very jovial tune.
I don't know. This is a tough one. I could see the Packers getting absolutely trounced here.
Which we acknowledged was a possibility last week, and just probably didn't put enough stock into that it was the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, Matt LaFleur,
and they're going to do what they do, right?
Yeah, very uneven results against the Niners under Kyle Shanahan. 2-3, but a couple of those losses coming in the playoffs. 3 of those losses. 2 of those losses in the playoffs. A couple ugly ones. So I don't know. Where do you kind of stand on this one?
This is the one where I think I'm willing to lay the points. I'm gonna lay the 10. I think this one could get away from Green Bay in the same manner in which we thought was possible last week, and it's largely because I think San Francisco is just much more buttoned up than Dallas. Like, I think they're going to be able to take advantage and exploit Green Bay's defensive weaknesses in a way that Dallas should have, but wasn't able to. 1, because they're Dallas, but 2, because the game never really allowed for it. Once they started fighting that uphill battle, it was like, well, there goes the entire game script. They're just not going to be able to run the ball as effectively as, maybe they otherwise would if that game was close in the beginning. San Francisco, an NFL high, 74 rushing plays of 10-plus yards. Green Bay has obviously had issues against the run. We've talked about that several weeks. That was mostly a perfect game by the Packers. Obviously, kind of let them back. And they were never really in it, but the score was a lot tighter than that game ever really was. Factor in the short rest of now playing on a Saturday after playing on Sunday relative to the 49ers, who had, not just the bye, but basically had another bye in week 18 that they just kind of punted on that game. So this is the thing with the Niners, right? They've always been amazing when they've been healthy. And this is the healthiest and rested I feel like they've really ever been at this point in the year. And this is an opportunity for them to roll.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. I looked this up. Since they went to seven seeds or whatever, the last year, Kansas City took care of business against Jacksonville, won by 7. Philly absolutely pounded a bad Giants team, 38-7. 2021, both 1 seeds lost, including the Packers against the Niners, and then Tennessee lost to Cincinnati. And then the year before that, both the 1 seeds won. So it's like a rest versus rust type of thing, and it's kind of hard to figure that out. I don't know where I stand with San Francisco. It feels like they have a good matchup here against the Packers. I had to lean anyway. I'm leaning the over, just because I think the Packers should be able to run on the Niners. The Niners have good running defensive stats, but they what was I pointing to make? But they're usually playing ahead, right? So
Yep.
I think the Packers, the Aaron Jones thing, who's been one of the best players in football for the last 4 weeks. He's a major X factor here. Since week 9, Green Bay, number 2 in offensive DVOA, top 5, both running and passing. I thought this was, I forget where I saw this. I would give them credit, but they've had the lowest sack plus turnover total in the NFL this season, despite being so young. I just think they have a chance to put up some points here. The back door feels like it's open. But on the other side, I still don't trust their defense. No team had more rushes of 10 yards or more than San Francisco, and Green Bay ranked 29th in rushing yards against or after first contact. So, yeah, what is the number? 40? Oh, excuse me, I scrolled up too far. 50.
Yeah.
I can see this being a bit of a shootout. I don't feel great. I think the other thing is if the Niners blow them out, I still think there's a chance it goes over. And if the Packers keep it close, I think it's a shootout.
Yeah, I think the Niners can get to 38 on their own, maybe.
Yeah.
In which case, yeah, you just need that opens it up on the back end for them to get a couple garbage time touchdowns that get you home past that number.
Definitely.
I was listening to a podcast the other day too. They said since the 2011 NFL playoffs, home favorites of 10 to 13.5 points have gone 10-0 straight up and against the spread, winning by an average of 18.3 points per game.
That's considerable.
So if you're hesitant in a spot like this to lay the points, there's certainly
maybe don't be.
There's certainly evidence to suggest that it's okay.
Yeah. So.
But yeah, for me, it's just it's kind of a narrative play too of I think San Fran is just going to be able to do what Dallas couldn't.
Yeah, that's
if you're not going to do it, all right, we're going to take him. We're going to put him on the
I do think there's that familiarity too with Kyle Shanahan, knowing whether it's Joe Barry or Matt LaFleur, that they're going to be. He has a pretty good idea of what he's looking for.
It's like Denzel Washington. Yeah, it's if you want something done, you got to get it done yourself. I think San Fran gets it done himself.
Fair enough. Alrighty, let's move to Sunday, starting with 3 p.m. What do you think of the schedule? Have there been 1 o'clock games in the past on divisional round? I can't remember.
I don't think so. I don't know.
Did I make that up? Even in the 90s?
I'm sure. Yeah, sure it was at that point.
Well,
probably at 8 a.m. games for all.
Yeah, that's true. The schedule's it's impossible to keep track of. We got the Bucs going to Detroit to take on the Lions. The Lions, fresh off of winning the Super Bowl, are 6-point favorites here with a total of 48.5. I say that in jest. I guess I'm happy for people in Detroit. I don't know, whatever. They show that one guy crying his eyes out at the end of that game in the stands, and it's it's the wild card round.
Yeah. Well, that was me when that under somehow managed to cash, despite how that first half played out. Is there 9 points scored in the second half of that game? I thought I was cooked on both ends. I thought Detroit was going to blow them out and it was going to soar past the total. Not the case.
No, it's so. I kid, like I said, I kid. Are we concerned at all about a letdown from the Lions?
I'm gonna be honest, I might be sick of Eminem more than I'm sick of Taylor Swift.
What's wrong with Eminem?
It's just they hyped that up a little bit.
It's Detroit. What else? What else? Talk about Little Caesar. So
yeah, sure.
Motown. I guess it's the most topical recent reference they have. I like this Lions team. I like Dan Campbell. I expect them to be ready to go. It's just a little okay. I remember my first playoff win. Their first in 30 years. Good for them. I don't know about this matchup. This is a tough one.
I was going to say, you can go first on this because I don't have a very good read on this game.
I'm having to be very much introduced to the Bucs. I will be fully transparent. I haven't watched a ton of Bucs football this year. I guess the one game I did watch in full was them beating the brakes off the Packers. And so I basically, if you ask me, the Bucs are poised to win the Super Bowl, and Baker Mayfield is the MVP. The only guy in Lambeau Field history to be the opposing quarterback with a perfect passer rating. I think we're all kind of being reminded of this. We talked about it earlier in the office. Tampa Bay, pretty good roster. A lot of talent on both sides of the ball, especially the defense. Not a ton of turnover with the defense. Defensive-minded head coach. They had the 14th best defense by DVOA. By comparison, the Lions have the 13th best defense. Tampa Bay won 6 of their last 7, including Monday night. My initial thought on this game, just without even really digging into anything, was field goal game. 6 feels too high. 6, a full touchdown for the Lions. I don't think I can get there. So more than on a feel thing, more than anything else, I think I would lean toward taking the points of the Bucs. I look at, when the Lions have lost this year, their losses have tended to come against good offenses. Seattle early in the season when we all thought that the Seahawks could be okay and when Kenneth Walker was healthy. Baltimore, Green Bay, right when the Packers started their turnaround, the Cowboys, and then kind of a whatever game, scheduled loss, basically divisional against the Cubs, the Bears. They lost just twice at home. So a lot kind of points that they beat the Bucs in week 6. But I think I've seen enough from Tampa recently. It's not perfect and it's not totally consistent, but I think they have enough offensive talent. I think that their scheme is good enough that they're going to score some points here. I think this game, if I had to be on something with the side or the total, I would probably lean over here. I think this is a shootout that comes down to a field goal, 4 points, something in there. 6 just feels too high for me.
Yeah, I've talked myself in circles with this game because I can't help but think that a lot of what we saw on Monday night and how lopsided that win was a product of Philly just being on a different planet. That they didn't even show up for that game. And it was pretty apparent from the opening.
Yeah, right.
Kickoff.
That's good. That's a fair point.
So I'm like, how much stock do I really put into that win for Tampa? And I think there were points there where they kind of tried to let them back in the game, and Philly just never really sees that opportunity. I've also just seen at various points this season where Tampa Bay, their floor is pretty low.
That's the concerning part.
There's a chance that they don't show up on Sunday, in which case Detroit blows them out of the water. The other part of it, so this is the human nature thing if you're Detroit, right? So you manage to get by that game against the Rams. Do you all of a sudden we got that playoff win out of the way? Yeah,
there is that.
It opens you up to then play a little loose, and I mean that in a positive regard. Or do you look at that win and it's you kind of think things are going to be a little bit easier going forward. So I'm just kind of all over the place with this game, clearly. So I'll probably end up staying away from this game altogether. I think I'm inclined to lay the points of the Lions, though, because I do think that the perception of Tampa Bay is going to get a little bit skewed by what we just saw on Monday night, and I just don't know if I'm buying into that all that much. And I've seen what they can look like when their offense isn't clicking. So, yeah, I think the initial lean for me is to lay the points with the Lions. The other thing, too, it's Detroit's offense, 6th most yards after the catch during the regular season. They like to get the balls to the playmakers in space.
It's a good idea.
Tampa Bay's defense is allowed the 6th most yards after catch. So maybe the track opens up a little bit. And Tampa Bay's defense isn't able to get stops, in which case, to your point, could hit the over here. But yeah, I guess I'm leaning Lions, but like I said, I don't have a good read on this game at all.
It's a tough one. It's
It's the Bucs for me. I don't know what the hell they are.
That's the problem, right?
I don't know.
trying to see like how the Bucs played inside. They feel like a team that could be helped by going indoors, but maybe not. I don't know. Like they like
Yeah, but it's like the other side of it though is like the Lions just feel like a team that could flop too. Like I don't think I really like either one of these teams for the long haul.
Yeah, I also I feel like I need to do a bit of a not a mea culpa, but some context. I mentioned the 6-7 thing in that stretch. They've beaten Carolina, Atlanta, Green Bay, Jacksonville, with or without Trevor Lawrence, New Orleans, Carolina, Philly. There's not.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think
I may be talking
to
myself out of it.
Like they got. Not only did you have weak opposition, but I think they got a few of those teams in pretty good spots. Like if that, I don't know if Lawrence played in that game, but even if he did, like he was kind of limping to the finish line, and that team was cooked anyways. So yeah, that's the thing. It's like every time Tampa Bay looks, dare I say, good, I'm like, I don't know. Like, are they actually good, or is it just a matter of them taking advantage of opportunities? But to the point about the Lions, like I could see the Lions completely flopping as well, and they keep it within the number at the very least. So yeah, I don't like this game.
One thing I do like,
I don't like the optics of it. There's nothing I like about it.
One thing I like about the Bucs, they take care of the football. +8 turnover differential this season. I think Detroit's just 0. So like they've done a good job. I think in only 2 of their last 5 games they have turnovers. They've been clean in 3 of those 5. So that's the key. I think if they do that, I think they're set up pretty well to go toe to toe.
Sure. But Detroit too, like their defense hasn't been great this year. Obviously, there were times where it's been terrible.
Yeah, it's tough for me to make that argument though, considering they're right next to each other and like.
They also.
But I don't. There's something about Detroit's.
They do get after the quarterback though.
So that's the one thing.
So like I do wonder if
Hutchinson's playing really well. Lately.
Oh yeah, he's been lights out for better part of a month now. So maybe that's where things kind of unravel a bit for Tampa Bay is if they're able to get after Baker, because Baker also like he's hobbling around every like 5th play.
This game does have like 30-7. It's a party in here, type of thing where like Baker 6 sacks, couple picks. They're going nuts. Maybe it's even the Packers pull an upset the night before, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, we're gonna host the conference championship.
Yeah,
like there is that thing. Like I can see that on the broadcast already, where it's like it's a party at Ford Field type of deal. So we've gone back and forth on all the different options here, but it's like. And we're gonna.
What do you land? Yeah.
Well, then we're gonna sit here next week and be like, we were all over.
You're right. You're right.
Well, yeah. If you throw
enough crap at the wall, something's gonna stick.
Exactly. So, but I just don't have a good read on that game.
I guess the more I talk, I'm feeling a little bit better about the Lions. I'm taking the Lions.
That's an old school thing. Like that hasn't happened much this year. Is when I basically support your pick when I'm on the other side, which I think is what I just did there. So.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's been a while. So.
This is the optimism I was talking about at the beginning.
It's rubbing off. So
doing what I can.
All right, let's get to Sunday
next
night.
game is much better.
This is the game of the weekend, I guess. Hopefully, this is one of those ones where it's like, I kind of hope both teams find it.
I'm much more definitive about this game.
Sure. Oh,
Spoiler.
I'm excited. You got the Chiefs going to Buffalo to take on the Bills. Bills 2.5-point favorites. Totals at 46. Weather, it's going to be cold, but that's Buffalo this time of year. Doesn't look like the snow thing is going to be a huge issue after last week. Bills, like I said, 2.5-point favorites. This is Patrick Mahomes' first road playoff game of his entire career, which speaks to a lot of things, most notably their consistency. Who do you like here?
Give me the Chiefs.
Wow. All right. Lay it on me.
I'm getting points with Patrick Mahomes. Like that in and of itself should be enough for me, right? Like I like the idea of that. But the other side of it too. So I like Buffalo's injuries are piling up defensively. Been without Matt Milano and Tre'Davious White for a little bit already, out for the season. Came out of that game against Pittsburgh worse for the wear. Like they're losing guys left and right on that side of the ball. Ultimately, we were leaning on AJ Klein, to guy who was packing up his RV last week. Yeah, and all of a sudden he's the defensive play caller, I think, because they lost theirs. So factor that in. KC with the 2 extra days of rest, having played on Saturday. Buffalo with that game that got bumped to Monday. I think Kansas City might be finding something offensively. Like Rashee Rice has kind of been a revelation. I think more important than the overall production, 8 catches, 130 yards, and a touchdown last week. More important than that is it feels like Mahomes is starting to trust them a little bit more. And I think you're seeing that in their willingness to throw the ball downfield. With the threat of throwing the ball downfield, I think that opens up the middle of the field where Buffalo's defense is, I mentioned the injuries, but they've really been taking the toll in the middle of that defense. So this could be a classic Kelsey game. Like, he just finds the soft spot in the defense, and next thing you know, he's got up over 100 yards. I think, too, like we mentioned this last week, if Kansas City goes on a run this year, it's going to look a little bit different. Mentioning, largely that conversation centered around the defense. Didn't really mention Isaiah Pacheco's role in all this and how I think that their offensive identity, he kind of is the offensive identity, right? Like, they're the hard running style again with with this banged up Buffalo defense. This just, to me, feels like a game where maybe you just kind of lean on them, boom, a big play downfield to Kelsey in an opportunistic spot. So, yeah, I like, look, if everybody's healthy and this game's played in Buffalo, maybe we're having a different conversation, but the injuries and the fact that Kansas City has shown improvement on the offensive side makes me feel a little bit better. I think with Buffalo, too, they're so susceptible to, like, that mid-game, like, it's like they take a nap for a quarter and a half here and there.
They were dominant on Monday, except for that little
once that blocked field goal happened, it turned into a different game. But, like, you can survive that against Pittsburgh or a banged up Miami team in Week 18 or New England or the Chargers game that they somehow pulled out. But, like, if you give the Chiefs just the slightest bit of wiggle room, this game, they're going to take advantage of it in ways that those other teams couldn't. So, yeah, I like Kansas City a lot in this game, and I might lean under, probably.
Interesting, compelling case.
But I'm more so on the side.
I think it's time. I think it's time for the Bills to fight back, win a game here against the Chiefs. This is a potential franchise altering and defining moment for the
They don't do
Bills.
it this time.
Yeah, you got the game in Buffalo against a team that's knocked you out of the playoffs 2 of the last 3 seasons. You've got the hurdle of the Chiefs having to I call them the Chiefs. One Chief is actually no. Should we drill into that real quick? The fact that they're the Chiefs, but if you talk about a thief, they're the thieves. Leaves. The Chiefs are. This is, again, there's going to be that thing where they have to go on the road for the first time. I guess that's a thing. It's unproven. You look at Buffalo, you look at the numbers. I'm a big numbers guy. I know this doesn't tell the whole story. They've got the 3rd best team in the NFL by DVOA over the course of the entire season. And that's, obviously, the injuries have been there all year. It has not been a perfect season. The numbers love them. And I think it's because they have a much greater discrepancy between their ceiling and their floor, whereas I think the Chiefs are far more consistent and in the middle of that. Maybe it's a hunch. Maybe it's just I think it's time. Maybe I'm not totally sold on the Chiefs and what they've been all year. I think we get closer to sealing Buffalo this week and they find a way to break through. Josh Allen's starting to come together. Like, that's the problem. You can't definitively say that with him because as soon as you're like, I'm buying into Josh Allen, it's all right, here I go, throwing, sidearm cross the field throws into 40-mile-per-hour winds. But he had the 5th highest PFF grade of his season last week against Pittsburgh. It was his highest since that Philly game that they needed to have. It's the first time since weeks 8 and 9 that he's put together 2 straight games of 80 grades or higher by PFF. I trust him in what he's been able to do. I think they've got some offensive versatility here that they can take advantage of the Chiefs. What were you on this whole? Some low and lean the under?
I guess.
I think I'm there too.
Yeah.
I think they find a way to grind it out here. I know that's not really the Buffalo's MO. Like, they are not a very tough team, or haven't been the last few years, especially for a team that plays in Buffalo. The Chiefs have been doing it on paper clips and bubble gum for so long that it has to come back and get them at some point. I think last week the cold affected them, but it also neutralized Miami. It's just the game was never in doubt, but it also wasn't super impressive either from Kansas City's standpoint. I was going to point to the drops. I guess all is forgiven when it's -30 wind chill. But I don't know. It's just
they should have won that game by even more than they did, though.
Sure, I guess.
What 2 of their 6 red zone trips resulted in touchdowns.
I think you could say it about Buffalo too. Like if that kick isn't blocked, like
for all intents and purposes, they're both coming off a blow. And
yeah, right.
You know,
I don't know. I think Buffalo wins the game, and 2.5 is not enough to scare me away. I think if it's a field goal game, whatever. If they win 28-26, I just have to live with that. But yeah, I'll lay the points with Buffalo, thinking that this is finally their time to break through. It's a whole different conversation next week if they have to go to Baltimore, in my opinion. But it just hasn't been there the way that it needs to be there for Kansas City all year, and now they have to go play a road playoff game in Buffalo. I don't see it happening.
I think the way you contextualize it in our respective outlooks on that is really like why we differ on this. Like when you said, like, the discrepancy between Buffalo's ceiling and floor is much greater than Kansas City's, they've just kind of been slow and steady, I guess. And so I'm putting a lot of stock into that, into Kansas City's ability to just kind of get by and, survive in advance sort of deal, which I think is like their identity this year.
I would just say that they're doing it slower and a little less steady than they ever have.
Sure. But I've seen Buffalo even this season mess around a little too much.
No, that's fair too.
I could see it coming back to bite them against a team like Kansas City. Like if Kansas City just continues to sort of do what it is that they've done this year, and there's gonna be that swing moment in the game. That's the thing. Like I don't expect either one of these teams to blow the other team out. Like I think it is gonna be close, and I think to the point about the under, like I think it might get a little ugly at times.
Yeah.
And so there's gonna be like that one play, and maybe it's like I said, Kelsey finding a soft spot in the defense and goes for 40 yards to get him in the field goal range right before the half or something. But I think we're going to come out of this game and be able to point to that one moment and be like, that was it. And for me, I trust Kansas City to execute in that moment a little bit more than Buffalo.
That's fair. Just like real quick here. I just had something come to me that I thought was a good point, but maybe it's not. How is Kansas City against tight ends this year? Actually pretty good. Never mind then. Kincaid looked great there.
Both of them.
Yeah.
Both tight ends in Buffalo looked really good.
How's Buffalo against tight ends? Yeah, maybe it's a game. Maybe this is a tight end game.
Yep.
Hell yeah. I can get that. Yeah, I think I get what you're saying, but I'm just trying to look up. I don't know, like what the Buffalo depth chart. I mean, Diggs is Diggs, right? Like, I guess James Cook could break a play. Like Josh Allen, that run.
Sure.
How about that run the other day?
So I saw some people were talking about that run and like whether it was, I don't want to say like cheap or like there's something sneaky about it.
Did he fake the slide?
Did he fake a slide? And
maybe, I don't know.
It's kind of genius if he did.
Yeah.
Like it's
also,
who the hell cares if you're able to do it?
I'm glad you brought that up. This is easy for me to say sitting
here. It's also
here.
Moose, man. He can
sitting in here talking to you. Like I don't have to make those tackles, and I'm not out there. Like so, it's easy for me to second guess. But like, and I know they've been trained to do one thing, but in the playoffs, like if you're ever going to take a 15-yard penalty because you're playing to the end of the whistle, like that's the time to do it. So don't.
Yeah. Well,
don't worry about taking a penalty because the guy's going to just take his head off.
True, but then there was later in that game. I think Miles Jack did do that, and didn't take his head off, but like the optics of it weren't great, and they called the 15 yards.
Well, you got to take it as it comes.
So it's bad. Pick your spots.
So I actually had this. This is an interesting hypothetical I wanted to pose to you. Would you rather be going back to Saturday night, frigid Kansas City? Would you rather play in that game and get hit repeatedly, or be like a trainer on the sideline?
Yeah, probably the trainer, right?
Yeah, I think I'd rather.
I don't know. I don't want to deal with that.
I think I'd rather play and just.
That might set you back a few days. Like,
I get it,
you're
but like
sore getting out of bed. At least if you're the trainer, it's like it's pretty stressful. But I mean, come on, we deal with stress around here all the time.
No, I'm just saying, like from freezing your ass off.
Oh, yeah, but I got to think he's moving around, and
I don't think so.
no, he's had to have been.
It's a lot of standing
bumps
around.
and bruises coming out of that. Yeah, I think he was working. I think you're underselling his work.
No, I don't. I don't think,
Duck into the blue tent. I'm sure it's nice and warm in there.
maybe. That's a lot of standing around with not a ton.
I'll tell you what. You mentioned last week, like you couldn't wait to see Mike McDaniel and what he looked like in the cold. That interview coming out of halftime, he couldn't even form words, and like I'm like I've been.
It's over. Stop the fight.
Yeah, I was like I've been that cold before. I know what he's going through.
Is he coming back out too?
Yeah, yeah.
Like you were just in that locker room for 15 minutes.
Yeah, that was exactly as advertised. That's for sure.
Yeah, so that's divisional weekend. Actually, the more we talk about it, the less enthused I am. So that's good.
All right.
The positivity is stopped.
I think the two games for me is the first and the last one. I'm kind of in. Well, you'll be into the middle probably portion.
What's the most likely Chiefs game aside? What's the most likely upset this week?
Well, I mean, probably Bucs.
All right,
but I think Houston's a live underdog in that game. But like, part of me is, do I want to see a Houston upset? And then all of a sudden, you're looking at Houston and Buffalo and Houston. Like, I kind of just want the favorites to take care of business. Yeah. Let's get the 4 best teams in there and let's duke it out next week.
I think the Packers are the most likely team to pull an upset and are also the most likely team to get their head kicked in. Does that make sense? Is that fence riding? I don't even know.
It wouldn't be the first time.
I know. But like, I can't tell if it's like boogeyman, like I'm just afraid. But yeah, it'd be nice to get some games out of those two teams, though. The Packers did kind of screw up the entire schedule, but that's neither here nor there. That's a nice little throwback on Saturday night. You want to talk about Belichick real quick? He got fired or let go.
Yeah, real quick. Where do you think he's going?
I think he's going to Dallas. I have obviously no inside information. I think at the end of the day, he is a guy who puts a ton of pride in the history of the game, and I think he's got a little bit of vindictiveness. So I do think he can rationalize the fact that he has to go work for Jerry and Stephen Jones as a way of getting back at Kraft, and he can pretend he's Tom Landry. So like it checks both of those boxes. That being said, like Jones has kind of been more bark than bite in recent years. Yeah. So I wouldn't be shocked if they run it back with McCarthy again either. Like we're operating as if he's already been fired. As of Tuesday afternoon at 2:15 p.m., he hasn't been fired. But if and when that happens, I think Jones is getting up there in age, and he's like, let's just do this. And if it doesn't work, we're going to be at a full reset anyway, right? Like Dak's getting up there in age already. Like they're going to be at a point where like they're going to have to blow it up anyway. So you might as well chase and squeeze whatever's left of that. So I think he goes to Dallas.
What about the Eagles?
I don't think you can.
I think their ownership is much more apt to make a knee-jerk reaction
so like
to
that's
what we
the
just
thing
saw.
Is that they've already done that. But I hate Nick Sirianni. I don't like him at all. I think he's a boob.
But it'd be a raw deal.
Yeah, it would.
At least give one season to be like, get it together.
Yeah.
Because
I mean, they missed the playoffs either. Like,
yeah.
I
mean, that was what a collapse. Though.
It was very bad. But they had a ton of injuries. They have to get a new defensive coordinator in there. So
it's what I don't. Ultimately, I don't think he loses his job, but I think that one of those, like, that's a situation where maybe they have these conversations, post-mortem, and they realize that they're just not aligned on things, and they do make a change, in which case it's a pretty intriguing possibility for Belichick.
Yeah, I think the musical chairs play out in this way. Belichick to Dallas. Tomlin.
Is this how you think or how you hope?
Both. I think Tomlin leaves Pittsburgh and/or gets fired, goes to Atlanta. Okay. So now the Steelers' job is open. Mike Vrabel, former Steeler, grew up nearby, Ohio, goes into Pittsburgh, takes that job. And then I think Dan Quinn goes to Seattle. Feels like there's a natural succession plan there already in place. Ben Johnson to Washington. And I feel like maybe, I don't know, will Houston let Bobby Slowick go to Tennessee? After this point, when you get down to like Tennessee and Carolina, I don't care. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Okay.
I think it's going to play out exactly the way I said it.
Interesting. Yeah, I would sign up for that. I think the only one I question the most out of that is Tomlin, right? Like,
yeah, right.
Does he maybe want to take a year off? Because that's the only thing with him. It's like, what's his exit look like? You know, is he going to TV for a year or something? Like, I could see something like that.
I don't know if he would want to do. He's like really like.
I don't know if he wants to, but I think he could do it.
Like it's, yeah. But he also seems like I don't have time for this. Like I'd rather, like it's.
Yeah, I just don't.
He's the man.
But maybe
I just love the idea of him being in like. At the Mercedes.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that like I just watch him and.
It's gonna look odd. Like he was just like so cool in Atlanta. With
gets me fired up.
Red and black. Oh
yeah. That'd be a good fit.
Yeah.
But we need Belichick, and selfishly for the purposes of content creation, Belichick in Dallas is the play.
Yeah, and that's the way it just feels like the NFL plays out. Like it's all. Like, what's the most the juiciest way that this could resolve?
The script is extending well beyond the field at this point.
All right, anything else?
No.
Thank you for bearing with me. It's been an adventurous 45 minutes to an hour. So, do you have anything else?
No.
All right, let's get out of here. That's Ricky. I'm Mike. This is The Spread. Enjoy the football this week. Divisional round. We'll be back again next week.
Two more of these, and then we slap a bow on another year.
And see you later forever.
Yeah, maybe. Who knows?
Night forever. All right. Goodbye.